Okay everybody, welcome back to the channel. So I've got quite an exciting shaft test for you today, and I've hit this previously. You may have come across this AutoFlex, so a $750 shaft here. I have hit a couple with it. I've gone out and bought one. I've took the plunge, so I've actually paid full price for this. It's arrived. I'm going to do a little bit more in-depth testing because I was quite intrigued with how it felt, how it sort of performed, which is one of the reasons why I bought it. But obviously I need to do a little bit more testing. I'm going to start with this a little bit in the studio with TrackMan today. I'm going to put it up against my stock shaft, which is the Hazardous RDX Smoke in a 6.5 in my Titleist TSi3 Driver head. So we've got the setup the same. We're going to test between the two shafts and give you a little bit of data on the performance and also a little bit of feedback of how it feels in my hands. Okay, so AutoFlex, maybe you've come across this on social media. I definitely saw it out there and I've seen a couple of reviews and it got me intrigued. Maybe see sort of a few of the tour players been testing this, and I recently got my hands on one just to hit, and it felt very strange, but it felt really quite strangely quite nice, or very different, should I say, is probably a better way of putting it. So we're going to talk a little bit about the shaft in a bit, but what we're just going to do first, we're going to hit 5 shots with my RDX, then we'll hit 5 with the AutoFlex, then back into the RDX for another 5, and then the final 5 shots with the AutoFlex, and we'll just compare some numbers. So we're just going to switch them around. So just to give you a heads up, my setup in my TSi3 drive, I've got a 9° set at A1, weight in a neutral position, and as I mentioned, a Hazardous RDX Smoke, and I have this cut at 45 1/4, so it's about 1/4 of an inch shorter than Titleist standard at 45 1/2, 6.5 flex, and it's in that 60 gram, just over that 60 gram area. Oh, that's an absolute cracker to get away with. Arrowed straight. So I do like the feel of this type of shaft. I tend to go something that feels a little bit sort of bit more rigid, a little bit more firmer, you know, typically around my speed. I like that stability, that feel in the shaft, especially in that sort of lower section of the club. So probably speed there, just 111.6, 160 ball speed, quite low on that spin too, just short 280 on that carry distance. Okay, a little bit on that toe side there. See, just the speed just sort of increasing a fraction there. 112.9, short of 130. So that ball speed wasn't as fast there with that slight toe strike. But accuracy wise, good there, and that's what I sort of like around this type of shaft. When I get those little miss hits, I know I get that little bit of twist, but when I got that support in the shaft, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of twisting in the head, and it feels like I keep a little bit more control of that ball flight. Oh, again, that's a bit of a toey strike, but that's a fairway find. I'm quite happy with that. You know, on the golf course, it's not going to be the longest shot there with that 273. That ball speed obviously dropping at 157 through that missed strike, but I've got a control of that shot. It's not really getting away from me too much, which I do quite like. Okay, so there's 5 shots. Let's move into the AutoFlex. Right, okay, so AutoFlex in my hands now. So they do lots of different flexes in. It's really geared in and around your club head speed. So for club head speed, for me, between 110 and 120 mile an hour, which is where I'm at, is the 505 XX as a flex. So that's what I've got in this particular club. So you categorize your sort of flex in terms of your club head speed. So the makeup of this shaft now is much lighter. It's got a very thin wall thickness in this type of shaft, and we've got much more of a softer mid and tip section is what I would sort of say. So first impressions when I got a hold of this, and you know, as we do as golfers, we give it a little bit of a waggle, don't we? And I know this isn't the same as what's going to happen with the golf swing when you actually swing the club and hit the ball, but you give it a bit of a waggle, and I tell you what, first impressions here for a double X, it's very soft. You see that head moving around, which is quite strange, isn't it? And that sort of initial thoughts there, it panics me a little bit, because I think with my sort of speed there, it feels like I'm going to lose control of this club head at the bottom of the golf swing. You know, we've got a lot of flex there. We're going to have a lot of maybe droop of the club through impact. Can I, number one, control my strike pattern? Because typically if that head's moving around more, it's sometimes harder to control your strike. And number two, can I control that face, you know, the face through that impact, open or closing? You know, so that's the first thing that jumps into my mind. As I said, I have hit obviously some with it, which is one of the reasons why I've actually gone and ordered it, and I felt it was quite straight. We're obviously going to see through this test, but so again, 45¼ inch, it's exactly the same length, set at A1, same head, my TSi3. Yeah, and that's quite a nice, really nice sort of opening shot. It's worked up that right a fraction there. It's a little bit of a different feel. It just takes that little bit of getting used to it, because you can feel the load of the shaft through the actual swing itself. You can feel like it kicked through at the bottom of that golf swing. It'll be interesting to see when we just maybe hit some slight miss hits, like I probably did with my shaft there, how it then feels with that twist around the head. So 57 grams is this double X. So it is a bit lighter than what I've got with that Hazardous. It's probably about roughly about 10 grams lighter, which is quite a bit of weight. That felt a little bit toe, but that's, I mean, direction-wise, accuracy-wise, really good. Okay, so nothing jumping out straight away there in terms of that sort of club head speed. You know, very similar to what I've just done with mine. So that was off the bottom, but again, that is really straight on its flight. Very accurate at the moment. 113.4, 165. And interesting there with that spin number. And again, you know, you sometimes associate that really soft feeling shaft to be a bit more of a higher spin profile, wouldn't you? Again, with my speed and that feel like well, you can definitely feel that head kick in at the bottom of the swing there. But you know, look at that slightly low strike. We'd expect to see that spin up a little bit more. But 2389 is I mean, it's a great number for a slight low strike with what feels like a very soft shaft. Oh, felt solid. Just left that up at the right hand side a little bit. Just peeling a fraction. Strike was good. Again, really good spin, 2,500, excellent spin. Love that launch, and that spin number around that area gets me that good sort of high 80s H and 290 on that carry number. Oh, that's solid. That's really good. So it's a different, as I said earlier in the video, it is a different sensation. It's a different feel from what I'm used to, but it's weirdly a really nice feel as well. Again, great numbers there. Lost that one way out to the right with that back into the RDX there. The feel there is completely different. You know, it just feels so much more stable, a lot more rigid. When you've just hit 5 shots with that, move back into this, it's a very different sort of feel. That's a nice shot. A little bit on that toe side there, but that's flown again very straight. Yeah, it's interesting that spin there, just a little bit higher on that spin on that particular shot. Okay, so there's another 5 shots with the RDX. Again, as I say, completely different feel. You can definitely feel that stability of that shaft through the swing. Definitely feel a little bit more firmer in that impact position, and the feel off the club face just feels a little bit firmer as well with how that shaft is actually flexing. Okay, let's hit final 5 with the AutoFlex. It's definitely a different feel through that impact. I mean, got into that a little bit more. You see that club head speed just jump up. Again, that spins really looks very consistent. We're going to have a look at some numbers in a little bit more detail. I also want to have a little look at my face control, because as I mentioned earlier, it feels like the club's going to come in all over the place, and it doesn't seem to be doing that. So we'll look at maybe that face angle at impact through all these shots with both of the shafts, but a very different feel. Again, absolutely arrow straight. As I mentioned earlier, it just doesn't feel like it should go that straight. You know, I literally pick that up and I give that like a waggle like I did earlier in the video, and it's like, instantly I'm going, well, that's a lady's flex. That's how soft it sort of feels, which is, it's just hard to get your head around just initially, but it does, the more you hit it, it does feel a different sensation off the club face, and the flight is really nice. That's a little bit low in the face, but the flight, again, very accurate. It felt a little bit lower than that strike actually, to be fair, but spin again, 2-2 spin. Starting to feel a little bit of confidence with this. Now, the more sort of shots I'm hitting, I feel a little bit more confident that it's not going to do what I feel like it's going to do. Okay, that's probably the one that I've hit furthest offline then. It's not a million miles away, to be fair. Very much take that on that golf course. Oh, right, okay. Yeah, that's a heel one. There we go. There, you can see that strike there. That's probably the worst strike I've hit there. Definitely felt that then. And you can see that ball flight's obviously just started up there. So had that little bit of cut, but it's not horrendous there. Yes, we've dropped some ball speed, as you're going to expect from that strike. Again, the spin hasn't whacked up massively. Obviously, we're going to drop the carry because of the ball speed drop. Okay, so interesting. Very, very different on the feel of those two shafts. Completely different. Let's look at some numbers. 10 shots with each of those shafts, split into two groups of 5 with each of the shafts. Let's look at the numbers a little bit more deeper. Okay, so let's have a look at the dispersion rings to start off with there. So we're probably going to say look at the front to back dispersion, the white being the hazardous smoke and the yellow being the AutoFlex. Obviously that last shot there has very much let me down with the AutoFlex, but apart from that, you know, the sort of front to back dispersion's pretty good. You can see with the hazardous smoke RDX, that's also pretty tight, isn't it? So pretty consistent on those numbers. That real sort of bad strike there with the AutoFlex, as I say, has just increased that circle. We look at that left to right dispersion. Obviously, I had a couple, those 3 which I lost a little bit to the right with the RDX. You can see there's one with the AutoFlex there, a little bit of a left one there with the RDX. So probably say left to right dispersion. The AutoFlex one is just winning a little bit more on that front. So the heat patch on the driver now is the strikes from all 10 shots with the hazardous RDX in the smoke. So you can see a pretty good strike pattern. Very, very happy with that. Couple maybe just getting that slight toe, but we know they're pretty good performing ball flights in terms of the data on those. And then when we move into the AutoFlex, there you go. It's not a lot of difference, maybe just a tiny bit lower there, but again, there's no real sort of wacky ones in there. It's more into that, in and around that sort of centre point there. So again, from what I felt would going to be a tough one to control would be the strike around the club face. I'd probably expect to see that a little bit more, but I could obviously feel that through the strikes. They were pretty good. Just that one at the end where I got it into this little bit of that heel one is where obviously then I just lost that little bit of ball speed. Okay, so let's have a look at the numbers there. So we can see the hazard smoke on the bottom, AutoFlex on the top. So we've got club head speed 112.3. With the hazardous 113.3. So on average at those shots we can see just a 1 mile an hour increase of that club head speed. We look at ball speed, we see a jump of 3 mile an hour or just under 3 mile an hour of ball speed, probably come from a little bit of that club head speed, in all honesty. Launch angle there, a smidge lower. I think that one there where I just hit that little bit of a pulley one that just cut a tiny bit back. It's quite a straight golf shot, to be honest, but obviously just hit that slightly lower in the face, just with slightly closed face. That launch just pops down, but pretty identical, pretty good area, you know, 11-12 degree mark I'm really sort of happy with. Spin numbers very identical, and again, it shouldn't sort of feel like that. We just missed one spin number there with the RDX actually, but very, very similar there, aren't they, in terms of that sort of spin number. I mean, what maybe just to look at when we look through those numbers, I mean, I did have a sort of real high one in there, as well as a couple of low ones there. So that 1500 with the RDX, whereas probably the AutoFlex was a little bit more consistent on that the spin number actually. So distance wise, you know, there's a couple of yards in it, which is going to be through that extra little bit of ball speed. Height was actually a little bit lower on average against the RDX. You know, we probably just saw that RDX, the strike pattern was just a fraction higher in that centre part of the club face against the AutoFlex. That's what's just going to change that little bit of that launch there and a tiny bit of that spin. So you can see the height's just going to adjust accordingly from there. But again, I think both are very, very sort of decent numbers. Smash 144 against 143. This is an interesting one to look at, is your dynamic loft. So you're thinking about how soft that shaft is at the bottom, how it kicks, and you think that's going to really whip past that handle end, you know, the club head against the handle end, deliver loft, lose that little bit of face control. But if we look at your dynamic loft that I've presented, they see 12.8 there with the AutoFlex, where it's 14.2. So it's actually quite low with the AutoFlex. I would expect that to be sort of around the other way around. We look at face angle. And to be honest, it was a little bit tighter with the RDX. You've had a minus 3.4, which is closed. going to a positive 0.7. Okay, so we've got about a 4-degree difference through those 10 shots from the worst to the furthest to the left to furthest to the open position. Whereas with the AutoFlex, yeah, you can see I've got a 5.6 closed. I mean, that was the one where obviously I've hit that heel, so it's going to really close up. So that was the worst one. But we did have a minus 4.4 there up against, and nothing in a positive number there up against, what was it, 0.2 there. So we've got a 5.2 degree difference, where on this one we're on a, what are we on there, 0.7 open, 4.1. So the hazard smoke on that front has just had that little bit of extra control there. Right, okay, there we go. AutoFlex, very expensive shaft, $750 for the shaft alone. It's a lot of money, and I totally appreciate, looking at the numbers there, there's not a huge difference there. Again, maybe doing this to test over a bigger sample there could be the way forward. Obviously taking this to the golf course, which I'll probably do that video for you as well, get it on the golf course and see how I feel like when I'm stood and facing like an avenue of a fairway with trouble either side, and how that sort of flex would feel and how it probably plays with my emotions a little bit more. That could be a really interesting test as well. I'm going to do a little bit more with it. I sort of quite like the feel, even though it's a bit strange. I've sort of got around that softness feel, and the perceptions that I thought would happen with that isn't really happening as much, and the accuracy wise is pretty good. So again, a little bit more test on my front in terms of that front. But let me know your thoughts. $750, would you be paying that sort of money for that type of shaft? It's a lot of money, isn't it? Plus then the cost of the driver itself, it's a lot of money. But I think you'd have to test this yourself, wouldn't you? We have actually seen a few golfers here test this, and they've seen some significant gains. Now, whether the original shaft they were in wasn't quite fitted for them, and obviously this is maybe a little bit more suited, you start to see bigger gains there. I've got something that's dialed in pretty good for me, and I feel quite like it, and this is into my sort of speed area, so the gains are very, very minimal, if anything at all. But again, it's a feel aspect, isn't it? A more bigger sample would have to be the test there. Okay, appreciate you viewing the video as always, and your support. Do comment down below. I'll try and get back to you, as many of you as I can, and hopefully we'll catch up with you all very soon.